Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm a campaigns director with In Defense of Animals, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this special program that we're doing. This program is a fireside chat, and we do these every month as a way to give you a little scoop about what's going on behind the scenes at In Defense of Animals. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to um, our elephant consultant here at IDA, Courtney Scott. And in a moment, she will be sharing the latest with our elephant campaign and the launch of our 10 more zoos. Hey, Courtney, just thought you might want to say hi.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Thank you. And we also have with us a couple of other folks from In Defense of Animals. We've got our development director, Bob Price. Hey, Bob.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
And we have Mary Easonsey, who's with our membership team. Hey, Mary. Can you say hello?
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate that. And we have Itamar, who's helping us with our tech as well. We're very grateful to you for your assistance. So we have some fun things to share with you today. We are going to be offering a couple of prizes for the randomly selected questions that we find in the chat box. So we're encouraging you to ask questions today in the chat. And these prizes are our Captivity Kills t-shirt that has an elephant on the front. So it's a really a great prize considering our theme today is 10 worst zoos. I'd like to take a moment and remind everybody to, if you're joining us on Zoom, to please have yourself muted during the presentation. And without any further ado, I'd love it if Courtney, if you would start us off with this fantastic presentation.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining today. And I think we can go to the next slide. So this just gives you all a little background about who I am and my experience. I've been working on helping elephants in zoos for about 14 years now. I started with Free the Oregon Zoo Elephants, and now I'm very happy to be working for In Defense of Animals and helping elephants in all the zoos. So we can go to the next slide. So this year, for our 10 worst zoos for elephants, we chose the focus of bull elephants, which is actually a subject that is not really given a lot of attention. So we really wanted to make their plight known, because as much as elephants suffer in zoos, they all suffer in zoos. But bull elephants have an additional layer of suffering, you could say, in that they have so much energy and they're so frustrated because, as I'm sure many of you realize, they go through a reproductive period called must. And during must, they have an extraordinary amount of energy and aggression flooding through their body because of the hormones. And they have nowhere and no way to expend that energy in a zoo. And a lot of times their must is exacerbated and it lasts for far longer than it would normally. So they're confined in a small space. They have nowhere to go, nothing to do. And then they have the additional burden of dealing with this period in their lives where they would normally be in the wild, just, charging through the jungle or the savannah and digging up plants and making friends and vying for other elephants for females. I mean, they have a whole host of things they do to work off their energy in the wild. And basically none of that is available to them in captivity. So that's why we decided to focus on that. And one of the research studies we use to, to bring it in and to explain exactly why elephants suffer in zoos is this study by Dr. Keith Lindsay and Dr. Rob Atkinson about space and why elephants suffer from lack of space. So this applies to all the elephants, and we're going to hone in on why it's most important for bull elephants. So could we go to the next slide? So this year we chose the Los Angeles Zoo as the #1 worst zoo for elephants. And the main reason for that is their lone bull elephant, Asian bull elephant, Billy, has been at the zoo for 34 years. And all of those years, he's been exhibiting severe zoonotic behavior, which is stress behavior. And in his case, it's profound bobbing and swaying. And Billy literally does this almost from morning to night, every day of his life. So this is an indication of brain damage, as we know from a study that was released a couple years ago by Dr. Bob Jacobs. And it's caused, once again, from lack of space, lack of stimulation, lack of any company but Billy, like most male elephants, spends most of his life alone. So in addition to that, we discovered from Billy's medical records that he had been in must for like 8 months, and therefore the staff was not able to treat his feet. And as you probably know, in zoos, elephants' feet are most prone to infection. A lot of times is because they're walking over the same ground, which is embedded with their own urine and feces. So that infection, that contamination gets into their feet and actually travels throughout their body. And in the end, if it's not cured or treated, and a lot of times it's not curable, they do die. So our goal is to get Billy out of the zoo before he does die from that or from any other condition that he might develop living in captivity. So we just had a rally to free Billy at the Los Angeles Zoo, and we were very fortunate to have some great speakers, including former LA City Councilor Paul Koretz, who put the motion forward at the LA City Council to free Billy. And that is something that we are eagerly awaiting for the full council to vote on. So we'll have a lot of hopes and dreams for Billy at the LA Zoo. And I think we can move on now, and we'll show a little video of Billy right here to show you some of his stress behavior. So thank you for showing that video. And I saw a couple questions there in the chat. We will have more time at the end of the program too, to answer more questions. But just to the one I just saw, yes, male elephants are put on exhibit. They're normally in their own enclosure, like Billy is here. Usually he's in a 1-acre exhibit by himself. And during must, he's always isolated. And this, like I said, he was in must for 8 months last year. So that means he was only able to have even keeper company for like 4 months of the year. And what the zoo always says is the same thing they always say about all their elephants, is that they're thriving at the zoo. This is their home. It would be terrible to transport them. And of course, we're misinformed. That's normally what they say, and that's what they did just say in response to our rally that we just had. Those are the typical responses. So could we move on to the next slide, please? Oh, this is just another photo of Billy, and Billy is in his 1-acre yard where he's been for the last 38 years. Well, let's see now, he is 38 years old. He's been there for 34 years. So actually that is a little incorrect there. It should say 34 years. Sorry about that. But Billy came to the zoo at 4 years old from Malaysia. And so in a way, it's kind of hard to say, because when they're born in a zoo, it's very terrible for them to live their whole life in a zoo. But in a way, it's kind of worse for them when they have any experience at all, which Billy had 4 years in Malaysia. For that contrast to be, is probably even more pronounced for them, because they have, they at least know some difference between the zoo and a free life, even though he was 4, which is fairly young, but still, he's got that experience and that in his memory bank. So let's see, so let's move to the next slide. So I'm not able to read all the chat things right now, but let's see. So now our number 2 worst zoo is the Houston Zoo. And that is because they are really jamming in elephants. They have a 3.5-acre exhibit and they have 12 elephants. And I think there's about 5 babies there. And this elephant we're showing right now, his name is Ty, and Ty is 58 years old. And Ty sired 20 babies at the zoo. 14 of them died, and most of them died before the age of 13, I think, before the age of 13. So breeding is very problematic in zoos, and often there's a lot of stillbirths, and as you see, they die at young ages. So I think they are still actually using Thai to breed, as far as I know. And the zoo has used them to exploit them, to do tricks. I don't know if let's go to the next video, next slide, please. And you can see a little bit of the behavior here. This is a Houston Zoo. This is Baylor. I think he's 13. So he's one of the younger bulls. And this is a fairly young age for an elephant to do this kind of behavior. So he's starting out fairly young in life. He already develops zoonotic behavior.
Because it's the only place that has shade, it looks like. Three-digit weather, Houston. August the 9th, 2023.
So you could hear our witness that went to the zoo speaking there. The day she went, it was 100 degrees, and this is the only shade the elephants have. So, and they're all crowded together under there, trying to take advantage of the little shade they have. That gives you an idea of the fact that this is far too many elephants for this exhibit. And then over in the corner there, you'll see another one of the female elephants. And we've observed her doing this kind of stress behavior for many, many long periods of time. We've recorded it. All right, so now we're on to the next slide. And this is our number 3 worst zoo, the Albuquerque, well, it's called the Albuquerque Biopark Zoo in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this is the second time we've had the zoo on our list. The first time was for all the deaths. They had 3 young elephants, excuse me, die from EEHV, which is elephant herpes virus, at very young ages. Like I think the youngest was 6 or 8. And so this time we're showing, this is Albert, and Albert has tuberculosis. So Albert is quarantined, and he can be quarantined for at least a year. So this is just another hardship that elephants and zoos face, and especially for this bull elephant to have disease and go through must. And also at this zoo, they have another thing they do for the visitors. They have the elephants paint. And what that means is they put paint into their trunk and have it blow it out. This is called entertainment for the visitors. So in just about every way at the zoo, they exploit their elephants. And I believe there are 2 females here at the zoo. Oh, and the other thing about the zoo, Albert has a brother. His name is Samson. And Samson, about 2 years ago, was shipped off to the Oregon Zoo for the purpose of breeding the elephants at the Oregon Zoo. This is something, zoos typically do as part of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums Species Protection Plan, paying no attention to the fact that, Albert and Samson had a very bonded relationship. So I think it's very interesting that zoos call their zoos their home, the home for the elephants, and yet they have no compunction about shipping them off to another zoo away from their supposed home. So we can go on to the next slide now. And this is our number 4 worst zoo, the Denver Zoo in Colorado. And what we witnessed here is some bullying behavior between the bull elephants. And what they're doing at this zoo, normally you do not see a herd. It's not really a herd, okay? But you normally do not see a group of male elephants together in a zoo. They did this because what they're doing with these elephants is they're using a lot of sperm extraction to send the sperm to other zoos for artificial insemination of female elephants in other zoos. So these elephants are subjected to continual sperm extraction, which is a very highly invasive procedure. So, I mean, they're subject to that. And whenever they're in must, they're separated as well. So they spend a lot of time alone. And then when they are together, sometimes they're not really compatible, as you'll see in our next slide. And this is another part of the video that's just showing the zoonotic behavior, zoochotic behavior of this elephant just pacing back and forth. Because what else is he going to do in that space? Their choice is to stand still or pace. That's about it. Yeah, so someone's mentioning about I think you're talking about the Global Sanctuary for Elephants. That's one of the sanctuaries that one is in Brazil. And yeah, they don't do any breeding at sanctuaries because there's no point in breeding elephants in captivity. And a sanctuary, as good as it is still captivity. So they don't want to breed any more elephants that are never going to be in the wild again. So thank you for that slide. And now as soon as you can, move on to this one. Great. So this is our number 5 worst zoo, Kansas City Zoo and Aquarium, which has been on our list before. The elephant you see here this is Tamani, and Tamani, I believe, is 13, and Tamani is isolated as well. There's, I think, a few female elephants here, but he is also subject to sperm extraction. So he really lives a very solitary life at the zoo. And the zoo exhibit is just a barren wasteland, as they are in all of the zoo exhibits. Some are a little worse than others. This one is probably one of the more barren ones that I've seen. The other one, the Sedgwick County Zoo, which is in Wichita, Kansas. The Kansas City Zoo is in Missouri, but the Sedgwick County Zoo is in Wichita, Kansas, and it also has a very barren desert-like exhibit. So we can go on to the next slide now. So this is our number 6 worst zoo, the Dallas Zoo. And once again, a very sterile, unnatural environment. And this elephant was taken from the wild. And I'm trying to remember this elephant's name. If you want to give me a moment here, I'll look it up. There's so many elephants. Okay, let's see this guy. Oh, Coop. No, that's the baby. Anyway, these elephants were taken from the wild, all of them. And Abaju died before his 7th birthday. So just another zoo with a lot of deaths. And this is Tindaji. Hoping I'm pronouncing that correct. But he's, of course, an African elephant. Taken from the wild and, used as a breeder here at the Dallas Zoo. So, the other thing I just noticed is a lot of these elephants, they don't even know their correct age. They estimate their age because they're taken from the wild, and, because the wild, they don't have like a list of how old they are, right? It's not like they have a record of the wild elephants and how old they are. So they just take them from the wild and just kind of guess, I guess, looking at their teeth, probably how old they are. But what the video we have on our website, which you can look at this elephant, is he's trying to forage in this very barren area. Elephants basically forage and feed for like 20 hours a day. So when the feeders run out, which happens all the time, they try to find food on the ground, and there really isn't any. So this is how they kind of, another frustration for them in the zoo. So we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, this is our number 7 worst zoo, the Oklahoma City Zoo, which has also been on our list before. And they have a lot of disease at this zoo. As you may recall, Bamboo came here a couple years ago from the Seattle Zoo, the Woodland Park Zoo, and she died about a year later, I think it was. And she had a lot of bullying that she had to deal with at that zoo. So it was hard for her too. But here we're showing this little male elephant and just the frustration he has living in the zoo with little to do for a juvenile elephant. And what happens to juvenile males is at around the age of 10 or 12, they often are moved around to other zoos in order to breed. So I don't know what's going to be the fate for this young elephant, but they've got a number of elephants at this zoo too. And it's just, I don't know. It's like, you really, all of them are bad, right? It's really hard to find the worst one because every single one of them has something that is really terrible. And this zoo is no exception to that. I think they have one of the larger exhibit areas, I think 9 acres. They consider that a very large area. But an elephant in the wild, the very least amount of space they have access to is 2,446 acres. So you can see a zoo with 9 acres, and I think the zoo has about 9 elephants. That is just so ridiculously inadequate to satisfy their needs. It really leads to all the problems they have in captivity. So can you move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so number 8, the St. Louis Zoo. And this is Raja. And Raja is, what he does all day is pace back and forth in this exhibit space. And he goes over to where the females are on the other side, and he's prohibited from going in with the females, but he tries to reach them. And you can see him going back and forth, always in an attempt to, this time maybe he can reach them, but he's never able to. And the females are all too old to breed. So Raja is not allowed in with them. Now, when they have younger females, they do sometimes allow the male in with the females. And what's going to happen to Raja at the end of this year, he's going to be sent to the Columbus Zoo, where they have younger females. So he'll be shipped off, and Samudra from the Oregon Zoo will be shipped in to the St. Louis Zoo. Samudra is 15 years old, and I'm not quite sure what they plan to do with him, if they're going to bring in younger females to the zoo or what. But right now, all the females are old. So Raja has no experience with females. And, that's yet another deprivation, because in the wild, male elephants do periodically visit the matriarchal herd. They're not totally isolated their whole life. They do have a bachelor herd that they hang out with, but they also come back and visit their family, their former family, their matriarchal herd. So we consider this zoo actually one of the worst. I think there's 8 elephants here. Can you move on to the next slide, please? And this is 9th worst zoo, is Zoo Tampa in Tampa, Florida. And once again, this elephant taken from the wild, all the elephants were. And this male elephant here, Sidudla, is all alone. And this is his little exhibit area. And he's basically lives in this little tiny area his whole life. The only thing you can say about Zoo Tampa, at least it's not freezing cold like St. Louis is, which can get below freezing. So, but it's just still a very barren, sad life for this poor elephant. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is the Oregon Zoo, our number 10 worst zoo. And this zoo has been on our list 13 times. This is the 13th time this year. And it's because it has such a terrible history of abuse and death of the elephants. A lot of stillbirths. They used to actually sell their elephants to the circus. So it's a very infamous zoo. And this is Samudra here that's trying to get in to see Samson. This is Samson, who was shipped to the zoo from the Albuquerque Zoo. And they used to have opportunities to be together, male elephant companionship, but there was a little bit of aggression, I believe, exhibited. And so from then on out, from what I've seen, the elephants have been separated. So, and right now I'm actually waiting to hear if Samudra is okay, because he was recently tested for EEHV. And as far as I know, the lab results are still out. So I'm wondering if that's the reason he may be in isolation, because I haven't seen him for the last 4 visits, or the 4 times we've had visits to the zoo. So I don't know what's going to happen with Samudra, but Samson was allowed to be in with Rose 2, the female elephant, and Rose 2 is now pregnant. This is her 3rd pregnancy. The first pregnancy she had was Samudra. And Rose 2, unlike any elephant in the wild, tried to kill Samudra. She tried to stomp on him, and the keepers ran in and pulled Samudra away from her. Now, some people speculate that Rose 2 did that because she knew the kind of life he would be leading. just like Paki did, just like Tusco did, just like Rama did, all had such terrible, sad lives in the zoo. So we don't know, but I've heard elephant people talk about that and speculate that. And then her second baby, Lily, died when she was 6 years old from EEHV. And I can tell you that Rose too grieved for a very long time. And in fact, she probably still is grieving. So it's hard to say if the baby will come out healthy. It's hard to say how long the baby will live. You know, it's going to be horrible if Rose 2 goes through another death of her baby. But anyway, these male elephants, this is their life, and they just have really nothing to do. And even though this zoo is considered a really great exhibit space, they call it Elephant Lands. Yeah, Elephant Lands. And it's a 3-acre outdoor exhibit with, you know, some timed feeders. So this is a very barren, boring, deadening experience for these elephants, especially these males. So let's move on to our next slide. So I just honorable mention this year is another Florida zoo, the Zoo Miami. This is On Guard. On Guard is 13 years old. And as you'll see in our next slide, he is already at 13, exhibiting some very strange stereotypical behavior. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this behavior of him swinging his trunk like that is honestly the first time I've seen that. And so I went in and I did some research on it. And it turns out it is a very profound stereotypical example of stereotypical behavior. This is not something an elephant would do normally. You know, they have other things to do with their trunks. They dig things out of the ground. They knock things out of the trees. You know, it's a very useful tool for them. They don't just sit around swinging it around like that. So that's just boredom and stress. And he's a young elephant. He once again was taken, I think he was taken from, I think he's actually taken from a Canadian zoo. So he was shipped from a Canadian zoo to Zoo Miami when he was 7 years old. So he's been a zoo elephant all his life. And once again, this is his exhibit, and this is where he spends his time. So he doesn't have any companionship. And we just want to point out that we are not advocating for zoos to bring in more males so they can have companions. That is not the answer, because oftentimes males can't be together when they go through must anyway. And as we said, the must is exacerbated in captivity. So a lot of their life is spent in must. They have to be separated. So that's not the answer. The answer is to stop breeding the elephants, number one. Number 2 is stop importing them from the wild. And of course, number 3 is to send their elephants to sanctuary and close their elephant exhibits. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is our final one, the Hall of Shame, the Jacksonville Zoo. The Jacksonville Zoo, this is their solo elephant here, Ali. He was from Africa. He was bought by Michael Jackson and lived in his recreation area. What was it called? I forget. It was Michael Jackson's animal enterprise exhibit he had where he lived. Anyway, so Ali was his elephant. And then when Michael Jackson died, he was shipped to the Jacksonville Zoo. So he came from the wild at a very young age. I think maybe even like around 1 or 2 years old. So, and this is his exhibit space, and it's very bleak. And both of his tusks are missing because he broke his tusks by engaging with those tires, which I think you can see them here in the photo. He was, you know, because maybe during must, he pushed his tusks into those tires and they broke off. So he had surgery and both of his tusks were removed. So that's just another thing that sometimes male elephants have to deal with in captivity. So there you go. That's poor Ollie. And he has so little companionship that our witness who went to see Ollie at the zoo, he came right over to her. Now, she's someone who actually practices kind of a healing practice with elephants. So she probably had the right energy, I'm thinking. And he came right over, and also could be because he wanted some company, right? So anyway, that was just her experience with Ollie. So anyway, we can go. I don't know what the next slide is. I'm forgetting. Could you go on? Oh, there we go. That's our last slide. So thank you all very much for joining us. And now we can open it up for the Q&A. So I think Mary or Bob are going to pick some questions out.
Yes, thank you so much, Courtney, for that really informative presentation. It's very heart-wrenching to see these images and to hear the stories of elephant after elephant and the bull elephants that are our theme for this year and what tragic lives they live. There are lots and lots of questions here. So Mary, do you want to pick out some that we can answer?
Did you want me to read them, Mary? Let's see. Okay, everyone. How many actual elephant sanctuaries are located in the US? There are 3. PAWS, Performing Animal Welfare Society, is located in Northern California. The Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee, and Hohenwald, Tennessee, and Elephant Refuge Park, Elephant Nature Refuge Park. Sorry, it's in Georgia, and that refuge was started by Carol Buckley, who also co-founded the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee. So those are the 3 in the US. There's one in Brazil, as someone pointed out earlier. There's one now in France. And of course, there's a number in Asia and a couple in Africa as well. So, okay, here's the next. Is this a question? Oh, do any of the elephant sanctuaries take in bull? Thank you for that question. And that is the heart of the matter. It's a big problem. One does, PAWS does. PAWS has 2 male elephants right now. One of them is from the Oregon Zoo. His name is Prince. And the other one is Nicholas. The Elephant Refuge North America in Georgia does have a male elephant. However, that male elephant is castrated. So it's a little different situation because he's allowed to be in with the females all the time because he, of course, doesn't have the aggression that a male elephant normally has because they go through must. But the Tennessee sanctuary does not take, well, actually, I take that back. I'm sorry. I just realized the Tennessee sanctuary just now took in a male elephant as a permanent resident for the first time. I believe his name is Archie. And another elephant, I think it's Tonka, if I'm not getting the name wrong, is coming soon from Zoo Knoxville in Tennessee. So yes, those sanctuaries do have male elephants. However, it is much more of a challenge because as PAWS as an example, if the male is intact, they're not castrated, they have to build very, very strong fencing to provide separate areas for them. And that's very, very expensive to maintain and to build. I mean, literally like $1 million to do that. So it's a big challenge and the problem with breeding, as you may know, is 50% of the time, the elephants born are males. So they're increasing this problem every time they breed because it's a very hard thing to keep them in zoos. And it's a very hard thing to find sanctuary for them where, they can take in a quantity, enough elephants that are being bred.
Thank you for that question.
Is there another one? I don't
Mary,
see.
do you have any questions, suggestions for us, Mary?
Yes, I've been putting them in the chat. I kept them on a document so that I can paste them in the chat for you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it right now. I saw the other one, but I don't see any
There you
more.
go.
There we go. Okay. How are elephants still being allowed to be removed from the wild? Oh, good question. Well, by hook and crook. Okay. They do it kind of under the radar right now. They'll say, for instance, Swaziland, which I think happened in 2018 or 2016, they bribed the government there, right? The zoos, 3 zoos gave them the government a lot of money, and they said they were going to be culled otherwise. They said there was no other place to take the elephants. Well, a number of organizations and attorney filed a lawsuit and said that wasn't true. But however, they moved them out in the middle of the night, uh, under the radar, like I said, and shipped them to the U.S. before anyone could do anything about it. So yeah, they're not supposed to be shipping them from the wild, but they come up with different excuses. They'll say that they're going to be culled, or there's no place to take them. So yeah, they tend to get around it sometimes, but it is a little harder for them now, because I believe CITES, if you know what CITES is, that's an organization that tries to protect elephants in the wild and lists them as endangered, for instance. So they have made it more difficult for zoos to take elephants. So what do we have here? Okay, I love, and they do, yes, they do. They do. And they're working on several zoos right now to help their elephants. The new one is Honolulu. And they're also doing Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado.
Can you say
Fresno
who
Chef.
they are so that everyone can hear that part?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Who they are, the ones that you.
A non-human rights project.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
Non-human rights project. And what they're doing is very ambitious and innovative, and that is to give elephants autonomy, to say that it's not the same rights as humans. I want to make that clear, but that they have legal rights to autonomy, to the rights of their person, to have freedom. So in other words, they're saying that by keeping them in the zoo, they're depriving them of those rights. I forget what you call those rights. Some legal scholar here might know. Habeas corpus? No, that's not it. Okay, never mind. I can't remember. But anyway, they're working on all of those zoos plus the Bronx Zoo. They've been working on the Bronx Zoo for quite a while now to get Happy out of that zoo. Okay, Happy at the Bronx Zoo, right. That's their first case, right? Protest every Sunday from, right. Thank you for pointing that out about the protests. Okay. Do you know if there is any legislation currently on the floor to ban taking elephants from the wild? I'm trying to think if there's anything new. I believe there is a federal bill about that. I haven't, honestly, I haven't kept up with that one lately. I'll have to check into that one. But as far as them actually being successful at getting them from the wild, CITES, like I mentioned, CITES does have some laws about that, some regulations. So they're prevented by international law at this point. Now, there may be also an additional federal US law. Like I say, I will have to get back to you on that. If you want to email me, I can get back to you on that. Feel free to do that at Courtney@idausa.org. And another question?
There are many of them. One that is seems it might be helpful is what is the average lifespan of an elephant in a zoo setting, and what about in the wild? Also mentioned was in the circus.
Yeah, I just saw that question. In the lifespan of an elephant in a zoo is about half of that in the wild. Now, here's a really odd fact for you that I found out from reading a book written by a former zoo veterinarian who worked with elephants in the circus and in the zoo. Okay. And he said was actually the lifespan of elephants in circuses was longer than that of zoos. Also, they're longer in Asia, where they are exploited for tourism. They have very hard lives in Asia. The logging elephants, the riding elephants, the begging elephants, all of that, they have longer lives than zoo elephants. And I just find that very interesting. There would have to be some kind of research done on that. But my speculation is that at least where they live in Asia, they have something to do. The circus, they have something to do. You know, when your brain is dead, and that's what happens when elephants in zoos, their brain just literally dies from lack of stimulation. That's my speculation. I can't tell you, I'm not a scientist. I don't know all the reasons for that, but I just thought that was an interesting fact. Okay, I support wildlife. Yes. Wonderful. Yes. And I think what's that elephant they rescued that was so famous? Not Raja. Do you remember? I remember he was called the crying elephant. Is that the one they rescued? He actually cried tears. It makes me cry to think about it. Right. No, Mohan was a different one, but I think there was a Raj. Maybe it was, I don't think it was Mohan. But anyway, yeah, he cried when he got to rescue. He was 50 when he got rescued. And that's another thing. Zoos always say they can't send elephants to sanctuary because they're too old and it would be so traumatic for them. Well, in Asia, 70-year-old elephants are rescued. And they travel on these rickety old trucks over dirt roads for miles and miles, you know. So yeah, that's another untruth given to us by the zoos. Okay, let's see. Sorry to share again, but just really curious. Although no, whatever happened to Nosy is safe. Nosy is at the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee. A group called Save Nosy and IDA worked on that to get her to sanctuary, and she is now very, very happy there.
Fantastic news.
I spent 2 weeks in a volunteer cutting sugar cane. Oh, that's cool. That sounds like a great job. Hard job.
Mary, can you read some of the ones that you're sharing out? Because I think it'll be a little easier for Courtney.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't read it though. I have a small laptop, so let's see.
Oh, okay. The most recent one was, what about roadside zoos? Aren't most of them even worse than the established municipal zoos?
Yes, they are, and we do highlight them sometimes. Certainly, Aja at what's the name of that zoo? Asha, I'm sorry. She's been on our list several times, and that's still up in the air. I have to check into what's happening with her because those elephants were confiscated. Those animals, excuse me, Asha was the only elephant there. So yeah, that's a pretty notorious roadside zoo. But just to point out what we've pointed out a couple years ago on our list is that, yeah, sure, certainly the roadside zoos are worse, but they really aren't that much better in an AZA accredited zoo. When you look at the medical records for the elephants in the zoos, the ones that we can get, their situation is equally bad in a lot of ways. So, you know, unfortunately. So let's see. What does this one say? I'll read it. Well, question.
Mary, do you want to, can you read the questions out?
Oh, sorry. What is Tom Vilsack and the USDA's response to all this abuse? Does the USDA either not inspect or inspect with no action?
The USDA has minimal enforcement over zoos. The first thing you have to do if you want to get a USDA inspection, what they require is evidence, visible evidence of abuse. Okay, so basically that's hard to get, right? If you don't work at the zoo, you're not behind the scenes, you're not seeing it. So you either need a whistleblower or I'll just tell you what happened at the Oregon Zoo. That's one example of a USDA case that I personally know about. The visitor witnessed a keeper beating one of the elephants when she was like 5 years old with a bullhook. And he beat her so severely that that case was taken to the USDA. A complaint was filed and the zoo was penalized and the zookeeper was fired. It took time though, even with all that evidence, it took time. And there is a state law in the state of Oregon called Rose 2's law. against sexual abuse of an animal because the bullhook was jabbed into her anus. Yeah. So yeah, it's very hard to get an investigation by the USDA, and they do very little monitoring. If they're going to go and investigate a zoo, let's say, they just tell the zoo and the zoo gets ready for it. So they're not going to catch anything unawares. Unfortunately, there are not enough or any national, federal animal welfare laws protecting animals in zoos, just the USDA. Well, what is your question here? Here are the details. Okay, thank you.
Another question was, what happens to female and male elephants in zoos when they can no longer breed?
Well, there's different answers to that. It really depends on the elephant. Now, I can tell you an example in the Oregon Zoo, Packy, when he could no longer breed and he had TB, they decided to euthanize him. And because of that, Dr. Mark Beckoff and IDA created a day called World Euthanasia Day. So that's one example of how a zoo deals with it. I would think that most of the time with the females, they normally don't live really long anyway. So they tend to let them just die, as far as I know. They're certainly not sending them to another zoo at that point. And of course, they're not, most of the time, they're not sending them to sanctuary. So, but in Backy's case, he was a liability to the zoo because he had to be quarantined and he wasn't breeding. So they basically killed him to bring in a young breeder, Samson, from the Albuquerque Zoo.
So sad.
I have a question here that says, how do you debunk and reply to people who say that zoos are for conservation, education, and that elephants serve as an ambassador for elephants in the wild?
Oh, thank you for that question. Well, let's tackle the last part first. The ambassador is an extremely anthropomorphic statement, right? I mean, is an animal really happy to be an ambassador for their species? I don't think so. And they do that all the time, though. They're always using that kind of language and saying that the animal enjoys being an ambassador or leading a parade or, having a birthday party with cake. They just want to have space. They want to be free. They don't want any of that. How do we debunk it? Well, that's a continual ongoing process that we use here at IDA in Defense of Animals, which is through a myriad of projects like alerts, which are petitions, press releases, rallies, legislation when we can. So it's just a myriad of projects that we're involved in to try and always through the media. A lot of times it comes through the media because that way a lot of people find out about it at once, right? And I just want to say we appreciate the public's part here, because what I always encourage people to do as the public is write letters to the editor. It really helps because that way everyone who reads that letter is going to get the message. It doesn't have to be just us. I mean, we do our part for sure, but anything you can do as a public to help is greatly appreciated.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. And any ones that you want to share with us, Mary?
Yeah, this one says, is it true that elephants in zoos are not permitted to breed naturally?
No, that is not true. Well, naturally, I wouldn't ever call it naturally, right? Because in the wild, it's a mating dance, right? The bull elephant and the female elephant choose each other. The female has the ultimate choice, by the way. But when the female is an estrus, the male will know which elephant to try to get her attention. In the zoo just puts them together. So, and they put them together until, while the elephant is in estrus. So the male will be in must and the female in estrus. So, and that's their only choice there, right? So if the male wants to have that kind of experience, a sexual experience, that's it. So it's far from being, I don't ever call it natural. but as natural as a zoo gets. Yes, but oftentimes that's not successful. So that's why breeding is very difficult in zoos, because the female estrus is not reliable in a zoo, probably with all the stress they deal with. You know, they don't have it on a normal cycle like they would in the wild. And there's, like I say, there's a lot of stillbirths. And so what they do try to do is a lot of artificial insemination, but that is not always successful either. That's fraught with difficulties as well, which we don't want to get into all the technical details about that, but both situations are problematic, and that's why zoos are running out of elephants and why they want to get them from the wild. Okay, let's see. Nothing about zoos are natural, are accredited. Yes, they are. That's true.
You might have to share the question so
Oh,
that people know.
yes, both the Tennessee Sanctuary and PAWS are accredited by GFAS, the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. That's true. So do you have another question, Mary?
I think this will be our last one.
Okay.
Speaking of snow, does IDA have any comments on what is the Edmonton, Canada Zoo that has had snow for many months?
Oh, yes. Well, as you may know, the Edmonton Zoo was on our list 2 years ago as the #1 worst zoo. And we'll continue monitoring and focusing on Lucy. Yes, that is a terrible, terrible situation, because Lucy is basically spending her life inside her barn. That's her life. I mean, not that the outdoors is that great. She has like a very small, I think about a 1 acre yard outdoors. And she's constantly guided and poked with the bullhook by the elephant keepers there. So that's it for her. So yeah, I mean, what does it get to? 10 below there, 15 below, I don't know, 30 below. It's ridiculous for an elephant to be in that situation. It's way too cold for humans, in my view, but much, much harder on an elephant. Their skin is very, very thin, by the way. So that cold seeps right into their bones. And the Association of Zoos and Aquariums even regulates that elephants cannot be outdoors below 40 degrees. So that's her life, and it's a very terrible, tragic one. But a lot of people are working. A lot of people are trying to get her out of there, including IDA. We're trying very hard.
Well, thanks to everyone for these really incredible questions. When we invited them in the beginning, we had no idea we would have such an amazing plethora of them, and they're all good. So if those of you who didn't get your questions answered, as Courtney invited, you can email her at courtney@idausa.org, and she will get back to you with the answers. And I want to take a moment also to thank you, Courtney, for this incredible presentation that you've given to us.
So glad that so many people, I'm glad people showed up. It's great to just share this knowledge. I really appreciate you all being here.
Yes, it's been very eye-opening, and especially since this was just this on January 10th, we launched our 10 worst zoos. So you're getting this hot off the presses, as they say. And this is all of what had happened in 2023 has been researched, investigated, and you're getting the details today. So also want to thank our team here, Bob, and thank you for helping us today, and also to Mary for your assistance. And I want to congratulate the 3 people who did get their t-shirts for their random questions. And I want to thank you for being part of this new fun giveaway that we have. So we hope to see all of you at our next Fireside Chat. We're doing these each month, and so you can stay tuned for more details about that. But meanwhile, please sign up for the Free Billy Alert, which is idausa.org/Free Billy. And you can also go to our homepage, and from there, you can find the whole list, the 10 worst zoos, and you can share it with your family and friends and help us get the word out. So thank you all so much for participating today. We hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much. Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks, Bob, Itamar, Mary,
Bye-bye.
and Lisa.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thanks so much.
Bye.